Hey YouTube, it's Ivy. I've got a new deck tech I wanted to go ahead and share with you guys here. Again, it's another EDH commander deck. I really like making these because it's great to be able to use all the cards from my collection, and you don't need four, like in Modern or Standard, you have to have four of the same card. So I guess I want to go ahead and share it with you guys and see what you think about this deck, and maybe you can give me some pointers, and I kind of show you some of the synergies I built into it and some of the strategies and advantages and stuff that are put in here. I'm also going to talk a little bit about Magic investors, while we're doing this a little bit, just to go over a couple things. So the commander, first of all, is Omnath, Locus of Rage. And obviously this commander is pretty fascinating because all you gotta do is play a land and stuff happens. So I thought that was a really neat feature. So we know about Landfall is whatever a land enters the battlefield under your control. I can put a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. Whenever Locus of Rage or another elemental I control dies, Omnath deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So this is a pretty heavy hitting card. I could see this as a very aggressive commander, and likewise I built a very aggressive deck surrounding this commander. So hope you guys enjoy experiencing this deck, and hopefully it helps you create a deck that'll win you some games with your friends in Commander. Maybe it'll make you some enemies, maybe it'll make you some friends. You never know, but at the end of the day, it's all just a card game, guys, and we're doing it to have some fun. Alright, so let's go ahead and go into the creatures. Now, obviously, a deck like this, you're going to have lands coming into play, but you're also going to have, aside from the commander, creatures, because the commander is, if you look at the mana cost, obviously it's a 7-cost commander. To get it out, you have to have 7 mana, so you're going to have do some, mana ramp on this deck. You want to also make sure that, obviously, try to keep in things that you can cast before you can cast your commander. Build in, a lot of different win conditions or options in case people punt your commander a couple times and it costs, 11 or 13 to cast from the command zone. Might be harder to get that out. So let's just go ahead and jump right into some of these creatures. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this first one. We've got Omnath, Locus of Mana. Obviously, I'm using this creature as a mana source, an extra mana source. So green mana doesn't empty from your mana pool as steps and phases end. Omnath, Locus of Mana gets +1/+1 for each green mana in your mana pool. Next card we got is Azusa, Lost but Seeking. You may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. Obviously, the mechanic of your commander is to play lands so you can get elemental tokens out. So having this card in the deck seems to be very useful. Next card as a classic, we got Craterhoof Behemoth. This guy. He costs 1 more than the commander, but, considering the mana ramp on this deck and all the other things going on, I don't see him having any trouble getting this guy out at one point or another. He has haste. He's 5/5. When Craterhoof Behemoth enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So if you have 6 elemental tokens out, everything gets +6/+6. You got 11 11s. It's like a game winner right there. And how could I not build a deck like this and not have Seaborn Muse? Granted, I have some instants in here, but nothing too big on the instant side. But hey, being able to untap my permanents and use them as blockers during another player's untap step, I think that's pretty darn useful. Great card. It's probably the next greatest untap card next to what used to be Prophet of Crufix, but I know that card's been banned. Now, I threw a Chroma, Angel of Fury in this deck because she can't be countered, which is useful to have something out that can't be countered by a blue deck. She's got flying, trample, protection from white and from blue. So interesting card. If somebody's playing some shenanigans with white and blue, which is loaded with that kind of shutdown stuff, well, she doesn't get shut down. I love it. I can buffer if I need to. I don't really care about the morph thing. It's not my favorite thing. Never really liked morph much, but there are people that play those kind of decks. Just not this deck. Now we got Vornklex, Voice of Hunger. This card is brutal. I mean, yeah, it's 8 costs, but I'm in a mana ramp deck, so I assume this is going to come out, you know, fairly soon if I have it in my hand. Trample. Whenever you tap a land for mana, I can add 1 mana to my mana pool of any type that land to produce. I'm getting double mana for my lands, in addition to what other shenanigans I'm doing to get mana. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land doesn't untap during their controller's next untap step. It's like almost like having a winter orb attached to a creature that lets you get mana. I'm surprised this card isn't banned, and it may very well be. I'll have to look that up, but this is the way I built this deck, and you know, this is a pretty amazing card. You could use this as a commander by itself, but I just threw it in because, you know, it just does so many great things. Why wouldn't I? Next one we got is Avenger of Zendikar. Reason I put this in there because it gives me little lockers. You know, that they're kind of neat to have little plant creature tokens out just in case you need them. And, you know, it's a 5/5. It gets landfall. It gets +1s, +1s on all the plants. So there's going to be a lot of landfall. So my 0/1 plant tokens could eventually be like 4 or 5 plant tokens or whatever. When it comes out, obviously, you know, I can start dropping lands and putting out tokens. So now we got Atarka. I threw this creature in there, this dragon, because he had flying and trample. That's helpful. It'll get double strike until end of turn. Granted, this is not a dragon deck, so it's not really tribal basis, but I thought it'd be a good card to throw in there just because it's pretty brutal. Next card we got is Rurikthar the Unbowed. He's Vigilance and Reach, so if something's flying in, I can block it. Like an angel, a 5/5 angel will be blocked by this. Rurikthar the Unbowed attacks each combat if able. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, this creature deals 6 damage to that player. That's brutal. I mean, when you're playing against a blue or a white deck, or even another like a red burn deck, you know, they're going to start casting spells, but you're just going to get damage by doing that. You know, this is going to be, I mean, this deck I can tell already would get a lot of hate at the table. It's going to draw a lot, but you know, there's a lot of big stuff in here, so let's see how it plays out. Carnage Tyrant. It's a dinosaur. Rar. It can't be countered, which is great. No, anti-counter spell, like, you know, all the negate and all that stuff. So you can't really can't block it from coming out. He has trample and hexproof, so he's going to stay. Once he comes out on the battlefield, he stays there. It's very difficult to get rid of him. Unless you make me sack him or do something else to him or lower his health or something. But actually, he's hexproof, so you can't do that, so that's good. He's indestructible. He has Death Touch. Ronus, the Indomitable, can't attack or block unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater. As you can see, most of my deck has things that are power 4 or greater. I can give a buff to another creature if I want to. He's only 3, so he's a pretty powerful creature for 3 to get out on turn 3 if I can do that. This is an amazing card. It's an Elf Shaman. You may play an additional land on each of my turns. I can play with the top card of my library revealed, so I always know what I'm going to get. And I can play that card if it's a land card. So this actually gives me, you know, card draw, kind of inadvertent card draw if it's a land. So that's kind of pretty cool. Somber Walled Sage, it gives me 3 mana. I can tap, get 3, tap, get 3. So I think that's a really useful card in a green deck. So, and obviously there's a lot of creatures in here, so helpful. We got Grand Warlord Radha. He has haste. Whenever 1 or more creatures I control attacks, add that much mana in any combination of mountains or swamp or red or green until end of turn. And you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. I say that's a pretty amazing card just because, you know, mana ramp. There we go, more mana ramp. Now, as you see, this is pretty useful. I mean, this literally would allow me to put on a very big creature without paying its casting cost. So if Elvish Piper comes out, I'm sure I'll get the 4 mana to drop it. I just need 1 more, you know, obviously when it's not summoning sick. And then I tap it, and then I can put out, I don't know, maybe Emrakul or something for 1 mana instead of, 12 or 15 or whatever Eldrazi have got. All right, we got one of these. We got a Plated Slagworm. He can, again, another card that has hexproof on it, so it can't be booted off the field. That's good stuff. And Now I jump into this Planeswalker. He is the only Planeswalker I decided to use in this particular deck. I may change that around. I've got some stuff in this deck that, you know, I decided to try to see if I could go without Planeswalkers and see how we can do that. Obviously, it allows me to untap lands, or I can get a token and put that into play. Next, we got a Steel Hellkite. I threw him in there just because he was a flyer. It's good to have some flyers in a deck that makes things that don't fly. I can destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X whose controller was dealt damage by Steel Hellkite this turn. Activate this ability only once per turn. I'm sure I'll have some open mana sometime, and if I attack in with them and do some damage, well, then I can start destroying extra stuff on top of that. It That Betrays. It's an Eldrazi creature with Annihilator 2. Obviously, you tap it, or attack with it. To the opponent will lose 2 of their permanents. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, put that card onto the battlefield under my control. Basically, I'm stealing things. And like I showed you just earlier, imagine I do this, okay? Elvish Piper, tap for 1, out comes it that betrays. I mean, that's just great. It's amazing. If I have those 2 things in my hand and other players aren't really watching what you're doing on your side of the board, and they don't, because a lot of people don't see sometimes Elvish Piper coming. It's a sneaky little way to get something insane out on the battlefield. Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. This card's brutal. When you cast Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, exile 2 target permanents. So I can just basically kick off somebody's permanents anytime I cast this. Indestructible, so he can't go away. Whenever Ulamog attacks, defending player exiles the top 20 cards of his or her library. It comes with a mill clause, which that's pretty amazing. And of course, we've got Kozilek, Butcher of Truth. Obviously, I can't put Emrakul in this deck because I think he's been banned in Commander, the 15/15 Eldrazi, but I'll put this guy in. When you cast Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, draw 4 cards. Comes with card draw. Perfect for Commander. Annihilator 4. Obviously, we just talked about Annihilator. When Kozilek is put into the graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles his or her graveyard in his or her library. So I get all my creatures that may have been killed back if that guy dies. Next card we got is Rampaging Balos. Because Trample, it's another landfall clause. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under my control, you may put a 4/4 green beast creature token into the battlefield. Next is, we got this guy, Primordial Hydra. This thing, I mean, it gets big fast. You know, if other players don't deal with it, this thing can become huge in a matter of a few turns. I mean, if you dump 8 mana into it, it's a 5/5, then it's a 10/10, a 20/20, a 40/40. Granted, it's not protected by anything in particular, but it's definitely draws the heat if it's out there, you know. The idea is to pull a lot of heat from people's decks, and then by pulling that heat out, when I start getting my elemental tokens out, well, they don't have heat to counter my commander or a lot of the other stuff. So once you start pulling out people's instants and things, it starts getting a little interesting. Deus of Calamity. Trample. Whenever Deus of Calamity deals 6 or more damage to an opponent, destroy target land that player controls. Brutal. Like, you know, I know many people play with, like, broken lands and, like, dual lands if they can afford that, or maybe, you know, non-basics that do strange things. I can easily get rid of that stuff. Next card we got is Goreclaw, Terror of Calcim Sisma. Creature spells I cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less. Well, wouldn't hurt to have cheaper creature spells, considering I do have a lot of creatures there. Whenever Goreclaw, Terror of Kalsama attacks, each creature I control with power 4 or greater gets a +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. All my elemental tokens are 5/5, so automatically, there we go. It'll get a +1. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube lately about a lot of these people, and there's a guy especially, Alpha Investments, Rudy or whatever. The guy invests a lot in these cards, and you know, I respect the guy for having that kind of money, capital, whatever you want to call it, to just a bottomless wallet and afford that stuff. But, you know, when you do have an investment, I will say this, you know, yes, Rudy, I'm one of the 3.69696969% of women that actually play Magic. And I'll tell you this, investing in this stuff is great. I have tons of these cards, and I know that they're worth a lot of money. If you start looking them up, you start figuring out these things are worth a ton of money. But I will say this. Once you inflate the market, you have to have a market to sell to. And I'll be honest with you, most Magic players, like myself, I'm a player, when you inflate the market on some of these cards, they may very well be desirable to certain players, but people's incomes and their ability to afford these cards and the target age group that plays this game, and I'm not really trying to pigeonhole anybody here, because I know that there's older people that play it, there's younger people that play it, but the target demographic of Magic is typically millennials who grew up with this, and that's where a large majority of your players are going to be buying this. I honestly don't know many millennials that can pay $500 for a Magic card. I mean, I don't actually know any. I couldn't even do that myself, and I have a pretty good job. I'm going to say this, and just say this, you can hoard all those cards, and I mean, that's, if you're a collector, great. If you really like them and stuff, nothing wrong with that. But the assumption when you invest in a thing is that you're going to be able to market that thing that you're investing to people that can afford it to purchase it. So if you have 100 or 150 copies of Bazaar of Baghdad and they're worth $2,000, $3,000 a piece, well, who's going to buy those? Are you going to find 150 buyers for Bazaars of Baghdad at $2,000 a piece? You might, but that time, I mean, how much is it time, and how much time is it going to take to sell all those at that price threshold? So, I've been looking at some of these Magic investors. He's not the only one. There's other ones out there that do this. But I guess what I'm getting at, a quick little, monologue here is that investing in Magic cards is great. Just, if you're an investor, you got to realize there has to be a demand for what you have in your inventory. So if you have 4 of something and you can sell 1 for some money, you probably will get the 1. But if you have 150 copies of a thing because you're trying to pump up the market and make it worth more, if you're trying to corner the market on a thing, but when it gets to be at a price threshold no one can afford, no one's going to pay your price. So that's one thing that I realize that some of these investors may or may not realize, that, I don't know if they're treating this like Bitcoins or whatever, but I just going to put that out there, that Magic's a fun game. It's these cards retain value, so I am willing to spend some money on them sometimes, but never the kind of money that some of these like legacy cards are worth. And yeah, there might be a market for some of that stuff, but at the same time, if you're like hoarding, hundreds of copies of a card, you're going to have a hard time fencing all those, just because your market is getting shorter and shorter the more they're worth. But anyway, that's my little soapbox for a minute. Now let's go back to our regularly scheduled programming here of this deck. This is a deck tech of a EDH, obviously Omnath deck. So now we're going to talk about our sorceries. We got Kodama's Reach. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, and put 1 into the battlefield tap and the other into your hand. Then shuffle your library. Obviously, it's for ramp. The whole idea is to get lands out and get landfall triggers. Search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Put those cards into the battlefield tapped and shuffle your library. Good stuff. We got Tooth and Nail. Search your library for up to 2 creature cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle your library, or put up to 2 creature cards from your hand into play, which is, that's great. I mean, okay, I'm just going to put Emrakul into play. All right. That's really good. 2 Emrakul and Kozilek or something, just put them out. And of course, I can pay 2 extra mana and do both of those things, which is really broken. I assume that card's not banned, but I'll have to look some of these up. I'm sure people in the comments can tell me if any of these are banned, which I don't think they are, but sometimes I don't really chase after that thing sometimes. Nissa's Renewal. Search your library for up to 3 basic land cards, put them into the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle your library. You gain 7 life. Alright, let's see here. Rampant Growth. Search your library for a basic land card and put that card into the battlefield tapped, then search your library. I think everybody knows what Rampant Growth does. That's a staple for like 15, 20 years. I'm probably going to pull this card out, but you know what? If something's really bothering me in the artifact world, at least I'll have a chance to destroy it. I'm probably going to switch that out for a creature that does that or something else, but stuck it in there just for now. Scapeshift. Sacrifice any number of lands. Search your library for up to that many land cards, put them into the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. Next one is going to be Nissa's Pilgrimage. Search your library for up to 2 basic forest cards, reveal those cards, and put them into the battlefield tapped, and the rest into your hand, and shuffle your library. Spell Mastery. If there are 2 or more instants or sorcery cards in your graveyard, search your library for up to 3 basic forest cards instead of 2. Next one we got is Overwhelming Stampede. Until end of turn, creatures I control gain trample and get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures I control. There we go. Next card we got is Explore. You may play an additional land this turn. Draw a card. Very useful. It means I can, if I don't have some of the other triggers going on, I can at least trigger a trigger just by doing that. Creatures I can control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. Overrun. So what's interesting about these two is, look at this. Obviously, there's a similarity. Very similar cards. Same casting cost, just one requires 1 extra forest mana. Interesting, huh? Magic does stuff like that sometimes. Alright, now we got these would be enchantments. Now, Blood Moon is very interesting. So once I get a certain amount of cards out, I am playing non-basics in here, but there's going to come a point where I probably would be willing to turn everyone's everything into mountains, which would really give me an interesting advantage late game. Even if I played a bunch of non-basics, I've got other mana sources and things that go get cards that I need that are just basic lands. So even if I've got my non-basics out, I'm willing to sacrifice them because half my deck needs mountains anyway, so I'm not worried about that. Kalini Heart, Kalni Heart Expedition. This is going to go off pretty quick. I mean, the amount of landfall triggers that are going to occur will just make this go off very quickly. Doubling Season. It is a token build deck. There are creatures in it, but it is also a token generation commander. So Doubling Season in this deck is a must. And of course, there's some things that add +1/+1 counters. I can double those. Great card for this deck. Quest for Renewal. You can see what it does. I can untap my creatures. It gives me basically very similar to, was it like Bear, Umbra, and that's the land one, but anything that allows me to untap my creatures on another player's untapped step. So it's very similar to like that card, and then if I have that card and, what is it, what's the other one, Seedborn Muse, well, I almost then created a Prophet of Crufix without actually putting that in there. Ground Seal, I stuck it in case I'm dealing with somebody that's doing graveyard foolery. Just in case people are messing around with the graveyard, that prevents them from messing with the graveyard. This card, oh my goodness, I didn't know there was a red ramp card until I looked this up, and I just happened to have one buried in my collection. Its cumulative upkeep used to be a bad thing back in the day. Well, this is the only good cumulative upkeep card I think I've found, but maybe there's more. But it allows me to add red mana to my mana pool in succession. So like on the first turn this comes out, I get 1. The second turn I would get 2. Third turn I would get 4, 6, 8. It's just, it builds and builds more mana, and there's no such thing as mana burn anymore. So, well, that's pretty useful. Alright, we got Druid's Repository. Whenever a creature you control attacks, put a charge counter on Druid's Repository. Remove a charge counter from Druid's Repository. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. We got this card, Primal Rage. All creatures I control gain trample. Very useful. This one, Parallel Lives. Double tokens. What can I say? I can't not put that in a token build deck, so there we go. Next card we got is Wild Defiance. Whenever a creature I control becomes a target of an instant or sorcery spell, that creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. I'm in a -5, your elemental. Well, he's actually a -8, so I can't do that. Alright, Growing Rights of Ilmok. It's one of those flip cards from Ixalan. When Growing Rights of Ithlimok. Jeez, these kind of words, right? Itlimok. Okay. Anyway, when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of my library. I'm going to reveal a creature card from among them and put it into my hand. So I'm tutoring the top 4 of my cards. Put the rest on the bottom of the library in any order. At the beginning of my end step, if I control 4 or more creatures, transform it. It's going to get transformed pretty much, you know, maybe on very quickly considering the amount of creatures this deck generates. Defense of the Heart. During your upkeep, if one of your opponents controls 3 or more creatures, sacrifice Defense of the Heart. Search your library for up to 2 creature cards and put those creatures into play. That's amazing, right? It's a really good card. Next one we got is Path of Discovery. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield or under my control, it explores. I can reveal the top card of my library, put that card into my hand if it's a land. Otherwise, put a +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature. Or put it on a creature. But yeah, this is good stuff. You know, lots of interesting things in here. Comet Storm. Now, why would I put that card in there? Well, look what it does. Commander is a multiplayer game, so the multi-kicker does allow me to go ahead and, you know, attack other players with the same amount of damage. So by the time I mana ramp into, like you saw the cumulative upkeep card with all that, with the red, I mean, eventually if I'm dealing with like 20 mana, I can just start wiping out players, you know, just by paying its multi-kicker. That's pretty incredible. Hero. Obviously, we know what it does. It's a ramp card. Fog. You know, in case something really nasty happens for 1 mana, I can deal, you know, prevent some damage. Card draw. Draw 3 cards. Good stuff. All right, and here's our artifacts and rocks and things. So we got a Thrawn Dynamo. I'm pretty sure you all know what it does if you play EDH. A Chroma's Memorial. In this deck, this is pretty much, could be very well the game winner with all the tokens flying around. Once you get a Chroma out, you are definitely the person that people are going to attack at the table. Add, obviously we know what that is. It's Signet. We got a Commander Sphere. We know what that does if you play EDH. Cage Sun, great card for this. When it enters the battlefield, I choose a color. Creatures I control of the chosen color get +1/+1. Whenever a land or ability causes you to add 1 or more mana of the chosen color, I add an additional mana of that color. Like I said, there's lots of ways to dump all this extra mana. I'm getting into stuff in this deck. Players can't activate Planeswalker loyalty abilities. Brutal. Just anybody playing Super Friends, if they can't get rid of this, they're kind of shut down. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card. Spells you cast cost 1 or less to cast. Creatures I control get +1/+1. This card is broken. I'm surprised this is still going for like 17 bucks. I think that card's going to be like 30 or 40 someday, or more. You never know. This is an old one. Now, the text it's a giant wall of text. Basically, it allows me to have an unlimited hand size, which, yeah, I know there's better cards in this, but it's a 1 mana. It's a 1 drop. Obviously, I'm probably going to find a Reliquary Tower and put it in there as one of my lands, but it's an interesting card. I thought it would be kind of neat to put a card this old. I think it's from Revised or something. Maybe Unlimited or Revised or something. I don't know. Then we got this one, Staff of Nin. I thought that it was pretty useful at the beginning of my upkeep to be able to draw a card in a EDH or Commander format. And 6 mana in this format, not hard to get, especially with a ramp deck like this. So you can see kind of where this is going. Now, the last bundle I'm going to work on here, we're going to hit these, we're going to go ahead and talk about these non-basics. Got some interesting stuff. If you're not playing this card, you know, back in the day when I first got this, when I was a lot younger, I was like just starting out with Magic, I thought to myself, this is useful, you know, and it was always worth $1 like when I was a kid, and now it's probably worth a lot more than that, but in any event, you can see what it does. It makes me sack lands, but I can still get 4 colorless mana, mana pool, and the lands I'm sacking I already got tokens for because they already came into play, so I'll take the extra mana, good stuff. Cinderglade, we know what that is. It's a dual land. Now, Dormant Volcano, the reason I put this in here is that we read it. It says, when it comes into play, return an untapped mountain I control to my hand or bury it. Now, if there's a mountain in play, I'll put this out. I'll have a mountain in my hand, and then some of these other cards allow me to play 2 lands. I can play that mountain again, or the next turn I'll have a mountain to play to drop and get a token out. See why I did that? And I still get the red mana for it, so why not? I got some Panorama cards here. Actually, no, I'm sorry. This one is Naya Panorama. You can see why I put it in there. I can sack this, go get, obviously, a forest or plains or a mountain, and put that into play. And the more lands you pull out of your deck, the more likely you're going to get a creature that you can play and do something with. Alright, you can see what that does. if something's in my graveyard, I can go get it and put it in my hand. Spire Garden. This is one of those Battle Bond lands. If you aren't playing any Battle Bond lands in an EDH deck, you need to seriously like get on that. It's literally dual lands for Commander. You know, good stuff. Obviously, here's another one of these. Not bad. Warped Landscape. Let's see. Warped Landscape is our next card. And see what it does. Obviously, that's why I put it in there, so I could get lands. Now, Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. This is a great card. I used this in a deck, gosh, a long time ago. Obviously, when you use this, put a mountain out. Once you get a threshold of mountains, you're going to start doing damage to people just by playing lands. It's a very aggressive deck. Yeah, I'm going to destroy your land. I'm going to destroy your non-basic. You know, as people that are playing some wacky non-basics and get rid of them. You can see what that does. Obviously, you can see why I put it in there. Obviously, causes land drop. You can see why I put that in there. It's two mana. Yep. I'm going to destroy someone's target land. Again, it's a very aggressive deck. So, probably going to get a lot of heat at the table. But, boy, it looks like it wants to deal with that heat, you know. You can see why I got that, you know, in there. That's a good card. Copperline Gorge, another dual land. Evolving Wilds, go get me a land. Drop it into play. Rootbound Crag, you can see what the deal is there. Terramorphic Expanse, go get me a land. Pretty obvious what that's all about. And our last land, non-basic, Thawing Glaciers. You can see what it does. I can search my library for basic land and put it in a play tap. This does not count toward my this card, I hope it's not banned. It's going to be mad if it's banned, but look what it can do. Landfall. Oh, I'll just do that again. Landfall. Every turn, I'll get an extra landfall. So, you can see why I put it in if you didn't know about that card. Alright, guys. Well, that is the entire deck. I hope you enjoyed this Omnath build. This is the commander, and this deck is how I built around that commander. There may be better versions of what I did, but I think this version is very effective. There's a lot of good things in there, a lot of mana ramp. Hope you guys enjoy this build. You know, I try to make these and share them with you guys so that, you know, you can have some different experiences when you're gaming with your friends. I hope you guys enjoy Magic the Gathering as much as I do. And yes, I'm one of those girls that plays Magic. And I think it's a lot more than, you know, certain people think. There's a lot of girls now that play this game that, you know, may not have played it before. But anyway, thanks for watching my video, guys. And I look forward to hear from your comments. Subscribe to my channel. And I'll keep making cool videos. And we'll, you know, keeping an eye on Wizards. Make sure they do the right thing and hook us players up, right? All right. Well, take it easy.